Dylan Mulvaney's a really good friend of mine. I love her so much. I've like watched what's happened to her in the press for the last few months. I'm like so frustrated. I just see so much like just absolute garbage, like just transphobic garbage all over the place. I see really not very many folks really interrogating their beliefs around their transphobia, interrogating like where are they getting their information, and then even understanding like our transphobia that we experience in our culture is like really truly rooted in like white supremacy and colonialism, and this conversation goes back like 400 years, and so that's like a really big systemic thing. But then living in a state where like this woman literally just lost her life because this guy thought that she looked queer. Like there are kids that like their families are like moving, like they like there are kids who like if they have already started their transition and they're like if they're 16-year-old and they're a sophomore in high school and they've been living in their gender identity since they were like a 5-year-old kid. They've been on puberty blockers. When they were, little, they had a concert of doctors and their family who cares about them and loves them deeply help them transition. Because if they didn't transition in some cases, not all cases, but some cases, like these kids will have such intense gender dysphoria that they can commit suicide. They can do things that can truly never be reversed. And so we have these people making these hyperbolic claims about protecting children, and about, protecting children from making irreversible decisions, bathrooms, fairness in sports, all of these things, when like trans people make up like at most like 2% of the population. Like gun violence is out of control, education's out of control, like people don't have access to the food, to the healthcare. I mean, my book's been banned. Like my book, like Peanut Goes for the Gold, like they're talking about banning. I mean, like this is really serious. And so like, it's just frustrating. I'm grateful, but I think to like have had a lot of my dreams come true, like I said earlier, but then in this like environment of like, where you feel like, oh my God, like if one person decides that like, something that I said or did, they can like, I mean, you literally, because so much of the transphobia that we read about, like when you read, like if you read an article about what happened to Dylan, like the way that people just speak about trans people and non-binary people, like the quotations, the inferred like threats or like not believing that we are who we say that we are. But then like how that actually has like been taken farther now to like revoking healthcare, like, limiting access to healthcare, calling healthcare child abuse. It's just really frustrating because it's such like a gigantic conversation that there's a lot of nuance in. A lot of people have been exposed to misinformation and disinformation and don't really understand. And so then I'm in this position of like, how do I balance like what I'm seeing happening to friends and people who I love, and then like running a business and trying to grow my business, and then with this backdrop of all this fucked up shit, it's hard. So I'm like, I'm grateful. Like, and I'm also like a hairdresser who loves doing hair. Like, I love good products. Like, I'm someone who in my 20s, like, I would overdraft my checking account to get the shampoo and conditioner that I wanted. Like, because I know when your hair feels good, like when you feel good about how you look, like you just feel so much better. And I would literally choose like products over food all the time in my 20s. And so I wanted to make products that are clean but ultimately, like more than clean, like I really wanted to make products that work really, really well, that don't cost like $100 for a shampoo and conditioner. Like I just wanted to make really highly functional products that work on people's hair, that hairdressers love, and that people love, that they can actually afford. And I'm so passionate about it, but like there's a lot of times that I can't even think about the cool things that I've done because I'm like, literally, like if you read comments right now, but like, who cares about a comment? I don't really care about comments. I care about like what's happened in my state, like in Texas, like. I mean, there's like this like drag ban that was just passed. Like I'm performing in Texas and Austin in December. Like I have to make sure, like there used to be able to be like, now in this show, Fun and Slutty, I wouldn't want kids there anyway. It is like an adult show, but like it is like there is like there's a law that they were talking about that would like just force people to wear clothes of their like biological sex in public. That law didn't pass, but there's like conversation around it. The way that we're like trending and heading, and any time where you like talk about like limiting a whole group's ability to like, access like information, healthcare, education, or just like their exposure to public under the guise of like protecting kids. Like historically, we've really seen that a lot of times, like against so many marginalized groups. So I think anytime when that starts happening, like we all really need to be super leery, especially because like sex abuse is such a huge issue and it is happening in families and in churches and it's happening in schools. I'll tell you where it's not happening is at drag queen brunch. Okay, it's not happening there. It's not happening in healthcare clinics. Well, maybe it could be in some places, like I don't, but really it's like it is not happening in gender affirming care and it ain't happening at drag queen brunches. It's like dentist or some doctor might put you under those things happen with these crazy fucking cishet doctors who you find out were like impregnating their fucking patients or like that is what, so maybe that, but like in gender affirming care and in drag queen brunch, it's not child abuse.
Where's this? Because I've noticed this, what feels like quite a tectonic shift in transphobic narratives over the last couple of months in particular. It seems to have been this ground, and I can't figure out where it's come from. I was saying this to you earlier on, but if I don't know where it's come from, I don't really know.
Part of it is conservative think tanks. So when Biden won in 2020, and we saw this in Virginia because the Virginia House of Delegates, it by one vote stayed Republican, and then because they have off cycle elections in Virginia, so 2019 it flips to Democrats, and then 2021 it reverses again and goes back to Republicans. And the issue that they really used there was bathrooms and trans rights, because the Democratic controlled legislator in that 19 session had done some things on trans rights, and they threw these conservative think tanks, because a lot of times Virginia, because it has off years, like they use that as like a bellwether to like test things, like just on both sides, like Democrats and Republicans. But they were throwing everything at the wall. Abortion, hell no, they don't want that. That's not going well for them right now, because most people support the right to abortion. So for Republicans, like that's not a winning thing right now. But the thing that in gay marriage, that's not really a huge thing anymore, because most people support gay marriage. But when they threw trans rights, when they threw biological males competing against women in sports, robbing, your sweet, pretty little white girl of her, hard-earned sporting opportunities, that stuck. That stuck hardcore. That got people fucking circling the wagons, honey. So, that is when we really started to see, and when you were like, oh, it's just in these last 3 months, it has not just been in these last 3 months. That's because of the way that elections work, and because we just had a midterm election in November of last year, and then they don't take office until January, and then it takes months and months for things to get through committee and stuff. All of this shit has been in the works. We've all been talking about this. If you look at my Getting Curious that was canceled on Netflix last fucking year, there's a whole episode about this. And it talks about the anti-drag bills up until 2022. As compared to that time, we have 4 times more at that time, and the graph was like this. So it isn't new, and it just takes a minute. But I think another thing that we're seeing is that, like, how you were saying, like, oh, the lion, or like the thing of like the tiger's coming for you, run away from the tiger.
Yeah.
So that's like negativity bias versus like positive bias. That's why a story of like someone getting murdered or someone getting abused is going to go way farther than like, the Good News Network story. It's your negativity bias. So that's the other thing, is that like, because we have so much fear mongering around trans issues right now, that's also part of like why like it feels like it's going so much farther, because people really are actually thinking that really think that there's like little kids going and getting hysterectomies, like going to school as a boy and coming home as a girl, having like full, you know what I mean? Like people actually have been convinced that like there's little teeny children who are making, permanent medical decisions with no parental supervision, with no medical supervision. People really think that's true. Another huge issue that we're up against right now is that there's so much disinformation around like the fact that actually like biological sex is in and of itself a spectrum. Like that's not even a binary. Like, do you know what intersex is?
Do I?
Yeah.
No, I don't. No.
So that's the I in LGBTQIA. There is like 6 intersex. There's 6. My friend Alicia Rothweigel is an amazing intersex activist. Her book is coming out. It's called Inverse Cowgirl. She also just helped produce a movie that just came out that is called Everybody. But statistics show that up to 2%, I've interviewed her on Getting Curious if you ever want to listen to it, but up to 2% of our population is and you should actually have her on this podcast because she's fucking major. But 2% of our population is intersex. we don't test everyone that's born for what our chromosomes are. So there's XX and then there's XY, but then there's also a variation that's XXY. There's also there's like these multiple variations. There's 6 main ones that qualify someone as intersex. And so what happens is that like if a kid is born intersex, doctors, they don't even mark that down. Like they will take the kid, they talk to the parent, and they say like whatever the genitalia most appears as, and literally one thing that I have learned and have been told is like doctors will literally say it's easier to dig a hole than build a pole. So most people that are born intersex, they will make into someone that looks biologically female, but these people will have to take hormones for their entire life. They have to have genital surgery, like on their genitals when they are babies. I'm talking like operate on their genitals when they're babies, and then when they're kids, and then they have to wear expanders when they're kids. Like their parents have to teach them how to wear expanders so they will have a vagina that looks like other people's vaginas. So kids currently, up to 2% of people. Now, when you say that to transphobes, they'll say like, oh, well, actually, that study was wrong and it's only 0.02 people. It's not 2%, it's 0.2. And either way, 2% of the population of 7 billion, that's hundreds of millions of people who have intersex characteristics. Of 0.2, that's still millions and millions of people with intersex characteristics. And there's a lot of people who look like they're men who are actually walking around here with XXY chromosomes. A lot of men who can't have kids, it's actually because they are intersex. So intersex people exist all over the place. Like intersex is a real thing. The idea of biological sex being a binary isn't even true. And if you talk to biologists, they will tell you exactly what I'm telling you. And it's interesting in a lot of these anti-trans bills for kids, intersex kids are specifically carved out. So in these bills, it says you can't commit, no genital mutilation, no hormones. Your kid must be the biological sex that they were born unless they are intersex. And then we must do genital surgery. We must prescribe hormones. We must enforce the binary. So that's, if you think I'm being hyperbolic right now, not you or just anyone watching, like do this research, look up what intersex is.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor, become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.